The war has now entered its 13th day as Israel prepares for a ground operation in Gaza to break the murderous Hamas terror group. But all eyes are still on the northern front, where just moments ago, an anti-tank rocket was fired towards Israeli positions, and Israeli artillery is now pounding Hezbollah targets from where it originated. This is as well as Israel having struck other Hezbollah targets along the border after they fired more anti-tank missiles at the northern town of Rosh HaNikra, according to the IDF. 10 rockets were launched from Lebanon, setting off sirens in Kiryat Shmona and several nearby communities. The IDF said 4 of those were intercepted in that previous exchange by the Iron Dome. The United States has thrown its full support behind Israel, with President Joe Biden set to address the United States in an effort to get an emergency budget to fund the war. But it's coming at a price. Israel must allow humanitarian aid into Gaza. That's despite originally promising a siege until all 200 hostages seized by Hamas in their murderous rampage on October 7th are returned home. U.S. President Joe Biden says humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip will come via Egypt and could begin as soon as Friday. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has landed in Israel, and he is discussing matters as well before he heads out to other Arab countries in the region, an effort to de-escalate the conflict, in his words, in his office's words.
I'm pleased to be here in Israel at this important time. Above all, I'm here to express my solidarity with the Israeli people. You have suffered an unspeakable, horrific act of terrorism, and I want you to know that the United Kingdom and I stand with you. I'm looking forward to my meetings later today with the Prime Minister and President, and I very much hope that they will be productive meetings.
And we're going to go directly to our studio discussion panel, which includes Avi Melamed, the founder of the Inside the Middle East Institute and an intelligence background, and Owen Alterman, our senior correspondent. I'm going to open with you, Avi, because we have just seen another anti-tank missile attack on Israeli troops. This comes as Hezbollah has been launching attacks at observation posts and sensor units on the northern border and moving great deals of military supplies around in Lebanon in position to launch an attack. The question is this the preface to them finally opening up another front?
Well, Ariel, thank you for having me. Going back to what I say since day one, talking about Hezbollah's strategy and tactic. Hezbollah is doing a gradual, very well calculated escalation of the situation, but in a very small steps. It's not doing something very dramatic. And it basically indicating 2 major purposes. One, Hezbollah wants and hope that through this intimidation that will stop possible Israeli major operation against Hamas. And 2, I think it reflects an inner dilemma within Hezbollah and Iranian, because the United States is in the region. President Biden sent a very clear message to the Hezbollah and the Iranians saying don't. They are looking at what's going on in Gaza Strip, and it's definitely not incentivizing Hezbollah to move in full steam ahead. I think that right now, as I'm looking at Hezbollah, when I'm trying to look ahead, I think there is some very interesting component at the Hezbollah's strategy. I think that in a way, Hezbollah is right now preparing the strategy for his PR for the post-war. Let me explain what I mean by that. One of the major issues that the Iranians, the Hezbollah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad were conveying as part of their marketing package to the Arab world was the concept that when the time will come and there will be a war, all those factors, Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, and others will stand shoulder to shoulder and fight. This is not the situation right now, and there is a big question mark whether that is going to be the situation in the future. Right now, you can already hear voices coming from Hamas and from Islamic Jihad and other factors in the Arab world who are actually turning to Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, and say, where exactly are you? We are waiting. Hezbollah and Iran are still with this dilemma, and the more the war is going to be expanding as expected, their dilemma is going to become more and more acute and relevant, and they will have to make some sort of a decision. So I think, when I'm trying to look ahead, I think that we should expect some sort of like more significant escalation of Hezbollah, but not full steam ahead. Because when I hear the sub-messages of the Hezbollah leader, by the way, a couple of days ago, the second in command of Hezbollah, Naim Qassem, said, we will contribute, meaning Hezbollah will contribute to this effort. And I think that in a way, this is kind of like laying the ground to some sort of like Hezbollah's PR messages following the war. Because, assuming, if that is going to be the case, the Hezbollah in Iran, in the end of the day, will watch Hamas and Islamic Jihad falling down and will not interfere in the war full steam ahead. They will come under a massive criticism by the circles in the Arab world, who has been all the time praising the slogans and the rhetoric of the Hezbollah and the Iranians. And I think that in a way, the Hezbollah and Iran, in that sense, are kind of like thinking PR in the day post-war.
You know,
we're going to continue this, but first I am going to bring in Pia Stekelbach, our correspondent on the northern border right now, just to give us a little bit more background. Pia, what can you tell us about that missile strike that was just fired on Israeli positions?
Well, Ariel, only a couple of minutes ago, we have been starting to receive reports about, first of all, mortar shells being fired from southern Lebanon into the area of Kibbutz Manara, very much in the upper region of the Galilee, located right on the border with Lebanon. These mortar shells were fired, and that has also been confirmed by the IDF, by an anti-tank missile. The residents there in the area are requested to remain in their houses, to remain close to their shelters, as more shelling from Lebanon is expected, Ariel. This is exactly the area that has been under fire yesterday as well. According to an Israeli military statement, yesterday alone, 10 anti-tank missiles were fired, as well as rockets and also mortar shells. Now, the area here, as close as up to 2 kilometers to the Lebanese border, has already been widely evacuated. So actually there shouldn't be many people left, but of course it is very difficult to evacuate all the residents from their homes. Now, yesterday the Israeli government decided to expand that area that might potentially be evacuated in the future to 5 kilometers because the northern frontier can really escalate at any minute. This has been a quiet day so far, Ariel, but we've been seeing that also the IDF has been striking Hezbollah positions during the night from the area of Rosh Hanikra, which is at the western part of the border with Lebanon. So we've really been seeing these skirmishes between Israel and Hezbollah all alongside the Lebanese border. We're not talking about locally limited positions. And when these mortar shells or even anti-tank missiles also hit Israeli territory here, they occasionally cause fires. This is what we've been seeing in a number of locations yesterday. Behind me, you can still see the smoke arising from it. Of course, targeting a major danger for the residents that live in areas very close to the Lebanese border. Now, of course, Hezbollah yesterday publishing also a video how it is targeting especially Israeli posts located here at this mountainous range on the border between Israel and Lebanon, specifically targeting surveillance and radar systems of the Israeli army, possibly also preparing further infiltration attempts. So we're not only speaking about the danger of what we've been seeing only a couple of minutes ago in the upper Galilee region, the danger of mortar shells and anti-tank missiles being fired, but also infiltration attempts that we have been seeing in recent days as well, Ariel.
It's definitely a very tense and very disturbing situation, to say the least. Pia, keep yourself safe out there, and we'll be back with you a little later in the day. I'm going to turn back to our panel in the studio, because, Owen, you were about to remark on that when we wanted to bring that news from the front first.
Yeah, what Avi had to say about Hezbollah. Look, I want to go back to the first part of what you said, that Hezbollah is doing this as a way of deterring an Israeli operation or an intensified Israeli war operation in Gaza. It's not going to deter an escalated Israeli war operation in Gaza. I think Hezbollah understands that very well by now. So I think that motive, it seems to me, can be eliminated. And I think that focuses our attention on exactly what you said about Hezbollah. And it also caught my attention, right? That phrase, contribute to, right? That's far short of a full-on commitment. That's far on its contribute. That means be a part of. That's far on a full force commitment, especially by a force that, according to Israeli intelligence, is 10 times the power of Hamas. If they wanted to fully commit themselves, they wouldn't use the word contribute, because if they were to fully commit themselves, Lebanon would quickly become the dominant front and not Gaza. It would be much more than just a contribution. And obviously the dilemma is very, very clear, because without intervention by Hezbollah and Iran, Israel's going to be able to achieve its objectives with Hamas. It may be at a high price, it may take a long time, but it seems that Hamas control over the Gaza Strip will come to an end, with all that means for the resistance axis. And they have to decide, do they want to come into the war to try to change that outcome? Or do they sit on the sidelines understanding that they probably won't be able to? And to this point, they've decided on option B. But again, if this is going to be as long of a campaign as Israeli leaders and policymakers say it will be, then they can simply wait patiently for what they sense is the right moment where they can come in and from their perspective, be able to land a decisive blow and at least fight this war to a draw or to a victory. Of course, as long as the United States is fully committed with 2 aircraft carriers, that ensures that Israel will win the war. And then it's just a question of how much risk Hezbollah and Iran would want to take. And one would think in that sense they wouldn't take it, which brings us back to what Avi Malamed said, that at the end of the day, this is to flex muscles for the day after, to show the Arab world that they were at least there. But obviously that still gives Hezbollah a bit of a credibility problem, right, given all that they have promised over the course of so many years, and a problem that they will have to reckon with.
Avi, does that essentially create a situation where time is for or against Hezbollah, as a ground operation in Gaza drags on and focuses attention there, and Hezbollah keeps this low-intensity striking observation, sensor, and radar dishes in the north, giving them a chance later in the war to possibly blow through a fence and then create a massive infiltration? Or is it working against them because they're simply losing their credibility and they've lost any element of surprise?
To the best of my reading and assessment, it is against them. Because look, if the war is going to expand, and every moment that goes by, people will see what's going on in Gaza Strip. Already there is a massive damage caused to Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza Strip, in the infrastructure. And the pictures are there in the Arab world. I'm telling you, there are already right now voices in the Arab world who are saying to Nasrallah, where exactly are you? So the more the war will expand and the more the damage will increase, the less maneuvering capacity, to the best of my reading, would be for Hezbollah, because then there will be a point of like no return. Because if it's going to be clear that Israel is going to move, full steam ahead, Hamas, as Owen said, Hamas rule over Gaza Strip is going to be eliminated, then people will say to the Hezbollah, now you are coming at this point where already this, we don't buy it. And then another thing, people will say to the Hezbollah, you saw what happened in Gaza Strip. Now you are going to sacrifice Lebanon for a lost cause, meaning the devastation that will inflicted on Lebanon is enormously significant. And then there is one more thing which is very, very significant. As I said from day one, U.S. positions and the U.S. presence in the region, because we have to remember one more thing. There is another arena that is called Syria. And Israel doesn't necessarily have to just be contained to the story of Lebanon. Iran's most significant strategic asset currently in the area of Israel is the deployment that they have in Syria, the military deployment, and that could be very, I would say, exposed to potential attacks. Right now, there is enough military power in the neighborhood that could cause what the Iranian has been building in Syria for the last decade, that could cause within hours an enormous destruction. This is something that the Iranians have to take into consideration, including the Hezbollah. This is part of their biggest dilemma. We don't have to play by the book here necessarily according to Hezbollah's and Iran master plan. We have maneuvering space. So again, when I'm trying to look at what will be Hezbollah's next move, and as Owen said, we are looking at something that is enormously bigger in its capacities than Hamas and Islamic Jihad all combined, I would say that, at least for the short term, we should expect ongoing escalation of the Hezbollah's moves against Israel, yet not total comprehensive and involvement in the war. I would say that if I try to assess what Hezbollah's ultimate participation would be, and I'll be very cautious about it, but I would say, I think that the Hezbollah will target the northern part of Israel, closer to the Israeli-Lebanese border, because there is some sort of like a deterrence equation here, because here is the very simple deterrence equation. Once it's going to escalate to this point, the next moment you will start seeing thousands of Lebanese fleeing from South Lebanon. They will be heading to the Dahda in Beirut. Nasrallah has a bad memories from 2006 with that story. So there is a limited maneuvering capacity. If Hezbollah will try to go beyond it, like targeting more strategic sort of speaking attacks, then you could expect the expansion of the war. And then, again, reminding us all, United States of America is present in the region with a substantial military force and a clear statement by the American president, message to the Iranians and Hezbollah, basically saying the one famous word, don't.